There are different ways to style links through CSS. Typically, we use pseudo styling, and it will cover all of our links. But if we want to give a class to a link so it looks different, we need to code the CSS differently. First off, we will cover the basic links that will change how every link in your page is displayed. But before we do that, there is a rule that you should know and that you need to follow. Albeit this rule is starting to die off a little bit, some browsers do still stay true to it. You must follow the love-hate rule. So L for link, V for visited, H for hover, and then A for active. A pseudo is a selector. It could be just a regular element, it could be a class or an ID, followed by a colon, like what I've highlighted, and then your action. So we always code the pseudos in that order. Link, visited, hover, active. Remember, love, hate. Oh, and just so that you're not lost when I say pseudo, a pseudo is a special action that certain elements can use. And this is how we would code them. So we have our div element, then we have our colon, and hover. So when we hover over any div element in our page, it's going to give it a solid red border with 3 pixels. Now this is not the preferred method throughout the web developing community, but it does work and helps spice up your site. Many developers will strictly use the pseudos we mentioned above for links only, but I mean, it's your website. So you do it whichever way helps you create the site that you want. No one's going to be grading you on your website. Most people just look at your website and use it. Normal links. By normal links, we mean links that don't have an associated CSS class or ID. Remember, we follow the love-hate rule all the time, and this is how we'd write it. So we have our A, we've got 4 of them, and that's because we have 4 pseudos to cover. So we have A link, which is our first one, then visited, which is our second one in our rule, hover, which is the H in hate, and active, which is the A in hate. So A is your anchor element, that's what creates a link from one page to another. The link pseudo signifies special styling for an attribute that is a link to another page. And again, that's usually just the A element. Next we have visited. So once you click a link, when you go back to that page, what should the link look like? Then we have hover. So when you put your mouse on top of the link, what should it look like? And then we have active. And active is when you have your mouse clicked on the link, but you haven't unclicked it yet. So the code above would create a link that looks like this. We have link, we set our text color to blue. Hover, our color is green, so when we hover over it, it's green. When I click it, the color turns yellow. When I actually activate it by clicking and letting go on the link, it's going to bring me to my new page. So after I clicked it, my text is now red. That's because it's visited. Now I know the order doesn't actually make sense for the way that you use it, but we do always follow the love-hate rule. Next, if we wanted to use a link and add a class to it, we'd use the A for the link, and then the class name. We could write anything here. I just wrote class name just as a general name. And then we have our pseudo. And then our declaration in here, obviously. So again, we follow the love-hate rule. With links and pseudos, we always follow love-hate rule. I know I've stressed that a lot. It's probably getting quite annoying, but you have to remember this. Let's look at some code now. We have a link. The class name is new. Before we go on, I'm going to explain how this works. We have our selector and a class right after it, and they're connected. There's no space between them. So this dot new here is our class, and it will only work with the A element. So if we added class called .new to a div element or a font element or a body element or any other sort of element that's not an anchor, it will not work. So what we have is we have an anchor, the class is new, and then our pseudo is link. So we have a black text, no text decoration. Then we have visited, black text, no text decoration. We do that so that the link looks the exact same as before you clicked it. Then we have hover. We specify that our color is black. Typically, we don't actually have to specify the color every single time unless there's a new one. It is a good practice to do this with links, though. So with our hover pseudo, our text decoration is underline. When we put our mouse on top of the link, it's going to show an underline. And when it's active, we're going to change the color to yellow. So here's the example. This is the old link, the one that's going to show up every single time. Remember, it was blue, we moused over, it was green, we click it, it was yellow. Go back, it's blue. And when we click it, it turns red. Now what about our new one? The new one looks just like regular text, but we mouse over it and there's an underline. When we click it to make it active, the text is going to go yellow and it keeps its underline. And then when we let go of it, it looks just like it did before. It didn't change its color like the very colorful one above it did. Now here's something I'm going to explain, and this might be a little bit tricky to get a grasp on at first. And I know I've mentioned this a couple times, but this is exactly how a cascading style sheet works. It goes from top to bottom with everything. So if we didn't specify color black in our visited pseudo or hover pseudo, it's still going to inherit the color black from link. Because although they have a different pseudo, the A element, which has an attached class to it, is the exact same for all four. A good metaphor for this would be how you are the same person every single day. You are you, but every day you wear different clothes. Or for different activities, you wear different clothes. So the visited pseudo will accept all the elements from the link pseudo. Hover will inherit everything from visited and link. And active will inherit everything from hover, visited, and link. And your entire style sheet is like that. Now I want to let you know that this is not limited to just classes. I like to use classes a lot just because they're a little more popular than IDs. I like to reuse as much code as I possibly can. And what I mean is, if we change all of our dots to our pound sign here, then we created the anchor element with the ID of new. And that would only work with the anchor element. Now there are some other pseudo classes, and we'll cover that either in the advanced section or we'll cover that in the CSS 3 section.